Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and we have our special guest. I can't say such a guest because he's on so many times, but we love having him here, Jack Lauber. Welcome to the Jewish View, Jack.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Well, it talks about many subjects over here. Your authority really on the Middle East. And that's what we're going to tune in, and not only the Middle East, but how it pertains to the United States also, because I mean, just I could say that many years ago, over 10 years ago, it was like, oh, they have a problem there. And really, after the World Trade Center, we could say we have a problem here. But I'll let you talk over here what the situation is and what does it look like, and maybe something, well, we can do something about it.
Sure. Well, I'm with Americans for a Safe Israel. It's an organization of Jews and Christians who believe in supporting Israel as the only democracy in the Middle East, a friend of America and a friend of freedom. And we believe that the current foreign policy of political correctness and the two-state solution is wrong. It's wrong because it's historically wrong. Israel has already been partitioned, so to speak, after the British promised the Jewish national home and the Balfour Declaration of 1917. They reneged on that, and the San Remo Agreement in 1920, endorsing a Jewish national home in Palestine. The Britain carved up Palestine and created Jordan on 78% of the lands of Palestine to have hegemony, to be involved in the oil-rich Middle East, and so that Israel has only a fraction, less than 25% of the original lands of Palestine. And for those who haven't learned or forgot history, when Israel declared independence, the Arabs, the leaders of 5 Arab nations, went to war against Israel and told their people to get out so that the Arab armies could come in and they would return victorious. And there were 600,000 or so Palestinian Arabs who were displaced and became refugees after Israel won that War of Independence in '49. And the world forgets that starting at that time and through the mid-50s, the Arab states expelled over 800,000 Jews from Arab lands. Most of these people were resettled in Israel. They didn't become perpetual refugees who were taken care of by the UN. We and other nations are footing the bill. And they're not only being taken care of physically in terms of food and lodging and clothing, but many of them are being trained to be terrorists. And it's unfortunate. They now claim 4 million Palestinian refugees, which are the great-grandchildren of the original 600,000 who left. So it's wrong to practice this victimology. You know, rescuing real victims is certainly something that all our religions endorse, but rescuing phony victims or political victims is something else.
Well, I mean, what's the solution? One person, I mean, again, everybody, it's a free country, and I saw someone gave a suggestion that when America went into, of course, good few years ago, and really Iraq is ours. I know it's independent, but you know, America took it over and really could have it. We're just so nice. We, use our soldiers and, and our losses, and then we give it back to everybody. But maybe chop out a piece of Iraq, and then listen, because what are you going to do? Yeah, I mean, it's not an impossible situation, but it sounded good to me. It was one person's opinion, but and I heard it, and I said, well, maybe that's a solution, because these people, whatever, if they 4 million, it is 4 million, that they're going to just stew in their juices. What's going to be? Well, can you envision a bright future? I don't know if anybody can see a bright future for the situation, but if maybe they had their own territory, maybe they would do something with it instead of just hoping, this victimology. Well, we're not going to do anything because we deserve. Israel should give us. Well, they haven't been giving them, for whatever, 50, 60 years now. And, they're not going to give in the future. Israel doesn't have the money to, pay welfare and build up cities of Palestinians. I'm just throwing that out. It sounded fairly reasonable. I don't know if anybody else has any great solutions.
Well, the appeasement's not going to work. We know that both the Palestinian Authority and Fatah have covenants still calling for Israel's destruction. They have never lived up to any agreement they've signed. They haven't stopped incitement. They're still broadcasting insightful messages and religious messages on their television and teaching children to become suicide bombers. I think Golda Meir was right when she once said that there'll be peace when Arab mothers love their children more than they hate Israel. And this is a problem. The problem is that when they talk about occupation, they're not talking about a few cities in the West Bank area, Judea and Samaria. They really mean Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem. And they want to take over Israel. Israel cannot give back territories that belong to it. These are Israel's historical homelands, and there have been legal opinions that Israel's recapture of Judea and Samaria are legal in the sense that these were territories that were former areas of Jewish settlement and homes prior to Israel's War of Independence, and Jordan occupied them and never did anything really for the Palestinians from 48 to 67. And then when Israel fought the defensive war of June 67, they recaptured their historical homelands, and they have a right to be there. It's that simple. The fact is that they're not occupying Palestinian land. There never was a Palestinian nation. Palestinians are largely Arabs who migrated into what is now Israel in the last century, mainly for economic reasons. Arafat came from Egypt, and there are many others who have their ancestors came from Syria or Lebanon and Jordan.
These Arab countries do not want them back? There would be a good solution.
No, the
also.
Palestinians have been used as a political pawn by the Arab League as a weapon against Israel. We know that. The PLO was formed in '64, and in 1964, when Jordan occupied the West Bank area and Egypt, Gaza, did they ever do anything to create a state for these people? No. It's a sad situation to see people being manipulated. for higher end.
In this case, maybe a lower end over here.
I mean,
Yeah, I know
they
what you're
consider it
saying.
a higher end.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that these people should be,
But
these refugees are human beings and they shouldn't be treated like dirt. But that's what I'm saying, maybe a solution, just push them out of the, give them the Middle East, give them a section of land that's pretty nice, and then just saying, here, make a go of it, here it is.
It would be nice if that could be done, but it's very, very difficult. We know that the Arab oil has a lot to do with it, and countries like Saudi Arabia are fostering Palestinian nationalism and hostility against Israel. It's a difficult situation.
Like we said before, Jack, maybe we'll carry it up from the Middle East, but, it's across the ocean, and that's how, years past, we care about Israel and we want peace there, but unfortunately, like I said, in the last decade, or even more if you can say, it's coming to our shores, and therefore we have to deal with these issues also. I mean, we had, like I said even before, really people don't remember World Trade Center was really bombed in 1993, and so it was, fairly minor. We got over, a few people died. It's a fairly minor thing. Obviously, World Trade Center in 2001, was obviously a bigger issue, to say the very least. So, people know that, but it's not new. In any case, it's a decade old practically. And, we have to deal with these situations. I don't know what federal government tries to, I don't know, you can say yourself, they don't get people scared, or, other people will say, it could happen again, and who knows. You got these two kind of things. Federal government is kind of easing people's fears, and then you got some, maybe, I don't know who's right, maybe they are right. It's going to happen again, and it's a terrible tragedy. So we find the Middle East crisis coming to our shores.
The problem, I think, is radical Islam. Now, I have friends who are Muslims, or moderate Muslims. They believe in peace and coexistence, but yet there are those who are pushing radical Islam politically. They want to suppress others. They want to have a world caliphate, where the Muslims rule the world, and that's a political goal. Those who, like Rabbi Kelman deals with in interfaith dialogues in this area, there are moderate Muslims who want to coexist with everyone else. They want to be good Americans. Fine. I have Muslim neighbors who are very nice people. But I think the issue, as Bridget Gabriel has said many times on television, and she was speaking in this area recently, and Bridget Gabriel is a Lebanese Maronite Christian lady who was persecuted by the Muslims in Lebanon, and her family was in a village that was attacked because they were Christians, and she survived after many years of hiding in a basement, and they were rescued by Israel, and she now has a group called American Congress for Truth that fights against radical Islam. Not all Islam, radical Islam. And it's analogous to saying, I have Christians as dear friends, but there used to be some radical Ku Klux Klansmen who did horrible things in the name of religion. And just like radical Islam perpetuated 9/11 and Al-Qaeda, who did terrible things. Sheikh Khalid Mohammed, who beheaded Daniel Pearl and did it as a political statement. Things of that sort are reprehensible. Many of us are working with Bridget Gabriel's organization, ACT, the American Congress for Truth, to oppose this plan for this giant mosque at the World Trade Center site. Now, again, we do not oppose someone building a mosque or a cultural center, but this particular one has, I think, a different purpose. It's called the Cordoba Center, and it's that name denotes Cordoba in Spain when the Muslims ruled Spain, and denotes Muslim political power. And I think it's best for me to read some of the words of a very wise Muslim leader, Mzudi Jasser, who's president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and is a former U.S. Navy lieutenant commander. Now, he recently wrote an article in the New York Post, and I think the article was May 24th, just yesterday. And I'll just quote some of the statements that he made in this article. His concern is the financing this $100 million 13-story mosque, whether it represents the local American Muslim community or comes with...
Can I interject that people, if they don't know, that they want to put it on the site of the World Trade Center?
It's near the World Trade Center.
Near it, or not.
There's a building about a block or two away.
I mean, there's mosques all over the United States, but
Sure.
but that's the issue here.
Right.
Whether they should put it right next to the World Trade Center.
And he thinks it comes with strings from foreign Islamists and countries that support terrorism. There isn't any transparency in terms of where the money's coming from, the many millions of dollars to build this edifice. And he makes a strong statement that he's, quote, "I'm an American Muslim dedicated to defeating the ideology that fuels global Islamist terror, political Islam." And he doesn't see such a center fighting terrorism or being a positive addition near ground zero, no matter how well-intentioned. And he says, to put it bluntly, ground zero is the place in America where Muslims should think less about teaching Islam and our good side and more about being American and fulfilling our responsibilities to confront the ideology of our enemies. And he says that the World Trade Center site represents ground zero in America's war against radical Islamists who seek to destroy the American way of life. It's not a ground zero of cultural exchange. And that if we build anything at the World Trade Center site, it should be timeless memorials to all those who lost their lives on 9/11, to the 3,000 innocent people who died, including New York City firemen and policemen. Memorials blind to faith, race, creed, or national origin. And he said when he heard about 9/11 on September 12, 2001, and when those planes hit the World Trade Center, they hit the core of him being an American. He looks at it as this is his homeland. It's a very powerful statement. So he wants to see American Muslims fight Islamist radicalization and oppose this, giant mosque, the Cordoba Center. And I think he's probably one of the most responsible Islamic leaders that I know, in addition, to others locally who want to be good Americans, and they oppose radical Islam and that political agenda, to dominate the world. So this is why we're opposing the mosque at the World Trade Center. Not because it represents Islam, maybe it represents radical Islam or political Islam. And I hope someday to be able to meet Mr. Jasser, who is a patriot and a Muslim that others should follow.
Well, I think that's a major point. What you're making, that is just that someone once said, again, I don't have the figures, I'm just quoting other people, that it's really the radical Muslims around the world's 10%. Says, well, there's a lot of Muslims, so that's still a big number of a lot of people. But on the other hand, to look at it on the good side, 90% really don't agree with blowing things up and, starting wars with everybody around the globe. So I just think that that would be, like you're saying, a positive idea of just accentuating, the relationship with the people who want peace and have them stand out as real leaders instead of the people who want to destroy. And, they're getting the headlines and the news clips, when they start screaming about America or, like we just said before, Israel, that there's good people that want to do good things, and there's no reason we can't mutually get along with each other and coexist.
Yeah. I think Mr. Jasser represents those who are, in effect, advocating a modern reformation of their faith. There are many religions who have gone through reformations, Judaism, Christianity, and I think that we have to interpret any religion in terms of ethics, morality, decency, and above all, coexistence and tolerance for others. And this is, I think, what Mr. Jasser is saying. And this is why we should oppose any religious edifice that has a political purpose, as this World Trade Center mosque seems to have.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. How is the authorities are trying to block it? I mean, it's, we consider in our opinion, but, as...
Well, it's a matter of now getting the mayor and the city council to act, and hopefully our arguments will be strong enough to prevent this from happening. I know Bridget Gabrielle and there are others leading this fight, have been on television and have been making similar arguments, and we're hoping that these arguments will hold and persuade the authorities to be, not to allow such building at this site.
Well, that's important. I think that, again, I think for Israel also, that's what I'm saying, to find reasons to coexist and to work together with peaceful people and bring them out as leaders.
Yeah. And there are those who, in the peace movement, even some in this Bethlehem community, who I think are being duped by very sophisticated propaganda. We know the Saudis have spent a lot of money on public relations in this country, and they're still touting the victims of the conflict, the poor victims, and showing pictures of Palestinian mothers and children facing Israeli soldiers, and although they don't show the terrorists behind them, and it's a problem, because right now, as we speak, there is a I'm going to say armada. It's not an armada. There's a flotilla of boats approaching Gaza, and they're coming from Europe. I think it's from Italy and Greece and
But
Ireland.
for trading?
No. This is they're trying to send a political message of bringing help to the poor victims of Gaza. Now we know that Hamas controls Gaza. Hamas wants Israel destroyed. Hamas has been labeled officially a terrorist organization. They fired 10,000 rockets over 8 years into Israeli civilian areas like Sderot. I've seen it myself. The late Harold Sugar and I were there, I believe, it was '04. We narrowly escaped the terrorist rocket.
Really?
In Sderot. We were on a bus and the rocket hit about a couple of minutes after we left. We saw children who have been scarred by these terrorist rockets, and it's horrible. And yet, these folks are allegedly bringing medical supplies and humanitarian aid into Gaza, and yet Israel daily ships millions of tons of humanitarian aid and supplies into Gaza by land, and supplies them with water, electricity. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been treated in Israeli hospitals. But this flotilla is to gain world sympathy, you know, for the poor Palestinians, and it's being financed by enemies of Israel under the umbrella of peace. And no doubt there are local groups, you know, who are supporting this, and it's propaganda, and we have to tell it like it is.
All right, Jack, we're out of time, unfortunately. We're having a good time talking, but I think it's very, very important that's why I always ask you on to give us the latest in our news coverage of the Middle East. And like I say, it really pours over into the United States also, these situations. But all we can do is a blessing that people, you know, come up with the right solutions, peaceful solutions, and they're effective. So thank you very much, Jack Lauber, for being on The Jewish View.
Thank you.